Welcome to Payne on Politics, a podcast where host Dr. Gregory Payne of Emerson College sits down with fellow experts to discuss the current state of politics, public opinion, and global affairs. In a world growing increasingly complex, communication and critical thinking is key. This only makes the Emerson motto, expression necessary to evolution, more true.
Hello, this is Gregory Payne, the Chair of Communication Studies, First Communication Department in the United States, also co-director of the Emerson Blanquerna Global Summit and also the Center. I'm here with two proud people, and that is, at Emerson we say we don't only study politics, but we live, sleep, and breathe it. You two have done that, so congratulations, Councilor Trey, as well as, of course, your campaign manager, who's the new James Carville here at Emerson. What was it like, Trey, when you realized all that work had paid off and you were going to be the new councilor for Marlborough?
Well, first, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and it's been an incredible journey. I mean, back in May when even before that, I mean, I'd been thinking about running for office for quite some time. I mean,
now, when was your first thought of running?
I was 18 when I really thought about running for office. I thought about the prospects of running in my hometown. I knew that I wanted my start to be in Marlborough, and it's home. It's home. It's where it will always be home.
Was it because you were just disgusted kind of with the status quo in terms of what they were doing?
I had worked for the city for the better parts of 2.5 years, and so I'd gotten to see the insides of city government, and I knew that we needed fresh faces. We needed some new ideas, some folks who were ready to step up, and people who were energetic to run. I think that we'd had a lot of campaigns in the last, at least since I was a kid, where folks weren't really going out and putting in the effort to campaign. They weren't knocking doors. They weren't meeting voters where they were. And there was a real need for that in Marlborough. So that's what, win or lose, I wanted to really accomplish that, to meet people where they were and to have them feel heard for the first time in a long time.
Well, what I was impressed by was the fact that you're out there. I saw your posters, I saw people, you were shaking hands, etc. How did the two of you hook up in terms of Chase, who of course is known for Emerson polling, he's one of my favorite commentators. How did you all decide this was a good relationship?
So we met in Phil Glenn's class, I think.
Positive communication?
It was argument and advocacy,
one of those.
And so we met then, kind of got to know each other better because we were both working on the Healey campaign. We'd get coffee, talk politics, and Trey had mentioned the idea about running for office one day, and before last summer, he had talked about, hey, there's going to be a city council race, and if the incumbent stays, I won't run, but who knows? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe we could run something. And I said, well, whenever you decide to run, give me a call. And a couple weeks later, I got the call. I wasn't expecting it to be so early, but I was happy to get involved. And so since May, we've been working and figuring out the most kind of bootstrap grassroots ways to run a campaign. This local, our universe was about 3,300 people.
Right.
So it was very attainable to be able to knock every door. And Trey did, at least once. A couple were 2 and 3 times. We had many passes, and it turned out really well. And Trey certainly earned his spot up there on the dais.
So now, Trey, from your perspective, many people said, "Gee, he's not even graduated yet." What was the message for people who might have said, "Well, you're a good baseball player, but how's this going to translate into this position?"
Yeah, I think for me the big thing was there's a precedent for it, especially in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and specifically in Marlborough. Back in the 70s, there'd been a city councilor who was 20 when he got elected.
Right.
And, then one of our more recent state representatives, and before that a city councilor, Steve LeDuc, had gotten elected at 22.
Right.
So there was, for me, I felt like I was kind of a part of that same message of young people who wanted to be involved and really cared. And I just, working for the city, I worked for the Housing Authority specifically.
Yes.
And that's where I found that so many of our issues are multi-generational, and they require diverse stakeholders from different age backgrounds. Right. So whether you're my age and you're looking for your first place, just getting started, or whether you are, a senior who's being priced out of their home. So those are both two kind of ends of the spectrum, but they impact all of us and everybody in between. And that's why I thought, it's really time that we have somebody who kind of represents both balances of that spectrum.
So I think housing, of course, anybody in Massachusetts or throughout the country knows that's a big issue. Chase, when you started working with your candidate, what did you see his assets as? I mean, when you said to him, okay, this is what you want to do, what did you think Trey brought to the campaign?
Well, just from getting to know him, I knew he was a great public speaker.
Charles Wesley Emerson's very happy about that.
Yes. And very sort of has that great combination of well-spoken, charismatic, and really knows the issues. I've gotten to work with a lot of candidates on different campaigns, and very few of them know the issues as well as Trey did in his hometown. And so I saw that as a big plus for our campaign. And knowing that housing in Massachusetts was a big issue and hearing Trey talk about it locally and his experience at the Housing Authority, I knew that was going to be something that was going to resonate. And so we focused on that and the way that development impacts affordable housing and, you know, what the state mandates about housing stock are, and just really getting into the weeds of that policy and all its sort of implications was sort of like a guiding through line for our campaign's messaging.
You know, you're here in my office where I've been involved in various campaigns, including Mayor Bradley's, speechwriter, etc. What were the tactics and strategies that you all decided to use that was going to get to your public in terms of winning the election?
It was really, I mean, grassroots through and through. Yeah. It was meeting people where they were. That's the type of politics that I've been raised to know.
Right.
Is you don't let people come to you, you go to them. And really get to know what makes them tick. What are the things that people want to talk about? And that really, I feel like, formed a lot of the issues that we started to discuss, a lot of the policy ideas that we started to develop. Certainly some of them were things that I've been thinking about before the campaign, but I think people brought a lot to the forefront. In terms of the ground game and the strategy, I think it was grassroots, just hit the doors as hard as we could.
Ubiquity. So we like the ubiquitous presidency, you know, is something that, you know, is certainly an area of study right now. It focuses a lot on, I think, you know, changing media environments. I think there's also a place to talk about the ubiquitous presidency in these municipal elections in terms of making sure everyone knows who you are. Because in this race, it was so attainable that we were able to get to everyone, and we did. And I think that was what really helped with such a decisive win, is that, you know, we sent... you know, we had about 3 passes of the entire universe on top of a couple other passes focused on persuasion, GOTV, of our positives. We sent 3 or 4 mailers. There was an emergency mailer we had to send out because early voting was added 1 week before it started. So we had been strategizing around a regular... you know, or not a regular campaign, but a campaign where election day was the only day you could vote. And then a week out, they decided they were going to do early voting. So we had to, you know, make sure we did GOTV for that. But I think, you know, even though at the time it felt like a crisis, it probably helped in a lot of ways, making sure everyone had the opportunity to come out. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, when, you know, in teaching crisis, any type of crisis is an opportunity. How did you make that work for you in terms of early voting?
Yeah, I think for us, we saw it as an opportunity to kind of win the early vote. By sending out that mailer, we made sure people knew when they could vote. I think there was a little bit of a communication gap between some folks with the city and when early vote was happening, and so it seemed like generally people didn't know when to vote early. Yeah. So our mailer was a great way for people to figure that out, and I had a lot of feedback from folks who said, I didn't even know there was early voting, but I got your flyer, I went and voted, and I told people, especially on the doors during that week, whether or not you vote for me, I just want you to know early voting's happening right now, and a lot of people didn't know. So I feel like for us the strategy was let's win the early vote. If we're gonna have that period, let's make sure we win it.
We also saw it as an opportunity to reach out to groups in the ward that had been kind of historically overlooked by campaigns, particularly in Precinct 1, which is the little, it's a more dense part of town, more apartment complexes. And just hearing Trey talk about, you know, the history of campaigns there, it sounds like those neighborhoods and apartment complexes get overlooked because it's hard to get in, it's not as easy to block walk. But with early voting, you know, we really wanted to make sure that, like, everyone had the opportunity to come out and have a say in the future of their community. And so once early voting happened, our first pass, especially on the weekend, there was one Saturday of early voting. We wanted to make sure that everyone had the opportunity, so we, you know, doubled down in that precinct to make sure that everyone on a weekend could have a chance to come out.
Well, you know, here at Emerson, we have a very practical political communication program. We think you could study politics anywhere, but if you eat, sleep, and breathe it, this is a good place to be. What would you say for both of you? We were talking about some of your classes. What do you think have been the most valuable classes to sort of add to the resume of why you are victorious, and as we look at this, as Trey has said, a stepping stone for his next project?
So for me, I have been really interested in speechwriting and comms. That's why I chose Emerson, and doing, working in comms. A lot of classes have been instrumental in helping me in that field. This is my first time being a campaign manager, in that specifically. Spencer Kimball's classes,
Yes.
Looking at polling and really digging into the numbers, were super helpful, because that's the one area where I hadn't had as much experience, and so having those classes with such a great mind, helping me kind of understand the numbers, have been really useful. So his midterm classes that I took, and then his Unlocking the Hispanic Vote class, which I actually got the chance to help him with that project and then take
Very
the class,
exciting
which was
project.
great.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Trey, how about you as the candidate?
Yeah, I mean, I owe a debt of gratitude to everybody who helped Chase and vice versa, because, I mean, you were the numbers guy throughout the entire campaign, and just his ability to work on the fly.
Yes.
I mean, we were working off from spreadsheets and back and
Yes.
forth, and really, they say grassroots. I don't think he gets much more grassroots than this, but it was good. But to your point, Carrie Thompson, who we've both gotten to know throughout
Absolutely.
the better parts of the
Very
last
practical,
2.5
yeah.
years.
Nuts
She's
and
been
bolts.
huge. She's been huge.
Yes.
I've actually never had a class with her,
Yes.
and nonetheless, we would talk all the time about the campaign, what our strategy was. She gave us a lot of feedback. Professor Hawkins, Dion Hawkins, I
Yes.
had 2 classes with him.
Good.
And both of those classes really molded me, especially in terms of public speaking. Obviously, he does speech and debate here at
Yes.
the college, and I've never had any formal speech and debate training or any competitions.
I think
or
it seems like a
anything.
natural right here.
So
Yes.
I will say it was those sort of classes that when really we had the opportunity to speak every class.
Right.
It was so discussion based, discussion oriented, really leadership oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Every student brought something different to the table for everybody, and we all kind of picked our brains. And to all my peers who were there too, I feel like we learned so much from each other, and we still do. And it's one of those things that I'm not surprised that we're both Emerson students. I think a lot of people, at least outside of Emerson, say, "Oh, it's ironic you're both from Emerson." I don't think it's ironic at all.
No, yeah, and we leaned on the Emerson Mafia,
Yeah.
from current students to alum to
Yeah.
staff,
No.
Yes.
everyone. We
So
reached
it's
out to
real.
everyone.
It's a positive thing out
Absolutely.
there. People ask, "Is it real?" I
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, it's there."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we-
can confirm it is definitely real.
Absolutely, it was great, and we couldn't have done it without the support of the Emerson Mafia and all the volunteers who came out and supported us.
Well, you mentioned, both of you mentioned the ubiquitous candidate, the ubiquitous campaign. There was a book out much earlier before that one, what was called The Permanent Campaign. That is, as soon as you win or you lose, sometimes people say if you lose, you go to the Kennedy School or come to Emerson and teach. So, Councilman, what is your next step? I know you're going to satisfy your constituency,
Sure,
but
sure.
it appears to me you probably want to move beyond this, and maybe he's going to be your manager throughout.
Well, he's going to be there for everything.
So,
no
1400
matter what.
Pennsylvania Avenue, but how about steps along the
Right.
way?
Yeah.
Well, how do we get there? For me, it really is about working for Marlborough right now.
Right.
And hopefully for a long time. I want to, really set up roots here and
Right.
serve. The Ward 6 seat has been really highly sought after for a long time. And, people in Marlborough are the only people who would probably know that. But, before the last counselor, Councilor Navin, he served for 2 terms. And before that, a gentleman by the name of Ed Clancy held
Yes.
the seat for almost 15 years. And before that, another gentleman, Mark Orem, who's an at-large counselor now, held the seat for about 15 years. So
Right.
it's one of those seats that's been really highly sought after. And I want to do my best job there because I
Yes.
know the precedent that's been set. The 3 of them have done some fantastic things for our community. So I know that the pressure's on now. You really got to deliver. So my focus is delivering, in this next term, and hopefully, keeping going after that.
And that's one of the things that really made me know Trey was the right person for this seat. Is throughout the campaign, there's always going to be a discussion about what's next. But anytime I would bring that up, Trey was always like, right now I'm really focused on doing a good job
Yes.
here. Right,
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
come. But right now, like. That it's not at the front of his mind, and I think by doing the best job he can here for however long that is, no matter where he goes to, what office he ascends to, he'll always be focused on making sure he's doing right by his community.
Yeah.
See, I think that's a very, very good trait, because oftentimes as soon as you win, people say, well, you're looking for the next step. I have to ask the question, but of course, doing the best that you can is very good. One thing that was very apparent to me in talking to Carrie, talking to other people, is that two of you, sometimes campaign managers and candidates, there will be differences. They go, well, you didn't do it this way. You seemed, every picture, every time I've seen you on Instagram, you seemed like you were like, brothers on the same team. Everybody was happy. Because, at Emerson we can read the nonverbals, and you guys just seem like you're having a great time.
I think we were friends first.
Yeah, right.
I knew Trey was going to run for something eventually, and I just wanted to be a part of that, and so I was glad to get the call as early as I did. And I mean, along the way, I think there were, not a lot of moments, but there were some where, we kind of had slightly different ideas, but I think knowing that, we both had the same goal, of course, and sort of both had the same understanding of like what's going to help the community, and Trey had this great line, which was what's more important than winning, and that just resonated really deeply with me, and was sort of a guiding light through the campaign. And so I think no matter what, we wanted to make sure that we ran a clean campaign, one that was positive, one that was focused on the people of Marlborough and Ward 6, and as long as we both kept that in mind, I think that's what made us work so well together.
Right. Now, Trey, in addition to being a candidate and now a counselor, you're also a very active baseball player.
I have been, yeah.
Tell me what it's like. What does it bring to you in terms of politics, being a team member of a baseball team?
Yeah, absolutely. Baseball is one of those things that I've always grown up with. I think I was probably 3 or 4 when they first put a ball and glove in my hand and said, go play. So just one of those things. I think baseball has so many parallels, not just to politics, but to life. It really is one of those sports that once you're hooked, you're hooked. Just the same as politics. Once you get the bug, you have the bug. And you hear actors say the same thing. It's true for a lot of professions. But being a part of a team like that it goes right back to a campaign or being a politician. You really got to see the whole field. I was a catcher, so I got the chance to see the whole field. And, there's definitely going to be blind spots here and there. But I think when you're a candidate running for office, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you got to touch everybody. You got to make sure you hit every base, know every play ahead in front of you. And that was certainly day to day. I definitely leaned on that experience that I had playing baseball and saying to myself, I got to be the leader here. The catcher is the person who sees the field. I got to make sure I see the field. And to touch on a point you said earlier, making sure we hit those folks who historically aren't touched by a campaign. Some of those apartment complexes and those apartment units that, people don't run up and down the stairs and knock the doors anymore. It's kind of a lost art of campaigns that I think we don't see as much. It's easier to send a mailer to those folks than it is to actually, go talk to them. So that was a big strategy for me, was, be kind of the field general, just like a quarterback in football, a catcher in baseball, jockey in a horse race. It's all kind of the same. Yeah.
So making that contact, door opens and they see you rather than just something on the TV or here's the flyer. Right. Okay, one thing I would like to ask, and I thank you for taking the time, is when we look at today's situation, many young people, I think many people of all ages, are a little bit suspect and say, why can't we have better candidates? We've got people running for the highest office that seem to be older, as well as just other issues. What do you think your message is for your generation in terms of fixing a situation that many people say is broken?
If you don't like it, get to work. That's sort of where I'm at. I share the feelings you described, and I think it's it is sort of the natural response to kind of throw your hands up, and it makes sense. But the only way to do something about it is to get to work, and I think a lot of change happens at the local level. I think I've a lot of my political experience is working in kind of municipal and state rep races, and a lot of good can come from electing the right city council people, and it's not as sexy as the presidency or your senator, but you can get sometimes the city council can be more functional than the presidency and the Senate. So making sure that you look at the whole field, look at where you can make a difference, where you can make things better, and just start, wherever you can and get to work.
So Trey, you're basically saying your constituency is your most important priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And And just to touch base on that question, I think Aaron Sorkin said it best: decisions are made by people who show up.
Yes,
It's
sir.
so important that we get out there, and even as simple as just voting.
Right.
And look, I get there's a lot of barriers to voting, especially in college. It's very difficult to, get that mail ballot and send it out, send it back, get the application. I get that there's an elaborate process to it, but it's so important that we do it nonetheless. And I think that's why, even talking about bipartisan efforts, I'm able to talk with people who I disagree with because I want to get to work and I want to win. I want to beat them. And so it's kind of this idea that working together, but also knowing that we have two different visions, and I'm going to work just as hard as you. And I think that when we have two kind of different ideas, both working as hard as they can, that's where we achieve something. That's where we achieve common ground, is when both sides are working as hard as they can. So I have a lot of friends who are on different political opinions as myself, and I encourage them to just work hard. Work hard at what they want to see, because I do think that there's a lot of commonalities in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
What's our common vision? We all want a place where our families can thrive, our families can live, we can all succeed, we all get the opportunity to have success. I really do. I think that's the common vision of a lot of Americans. And when we're able to work hard in that endeavor, we're able to bridge those gaps and have really big accomplishments.
Terrific. One question I would like to ask both of you is, you both, of course, eat, sleep, and, as I said, breathe politics. Who are people, candidates, could be campaign managers, it could be family members, and of course I know your mom is a big fan because we follow each other.
Yep.
Who would be a figure that has been a change agent? It doesn't have to be American, it could be anybody that you sort of look up to as a role model.
So I've
Besides
got
Spencer, of course.
Spencer is absolutely one of them. One of the smartest people I've met. My mentor is Dr. Lado Barbarena, who worked on the Hispanic study.
Terrifically
at
talented.
Every point along the way, I have gotten to come up watching her run campaigns, and at every point along the campaign, I was asking myself, what would Lado do? And that seemed to be a healthy way to think about it.
She was probably whispering in your ear what she would do.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And then looking at the national scene, I've always thought David Axelrod was a really good mind in democratic politics, and sort of learning from what we could apply from his kind of more presidential level of politics to this local race. I tried to do as well.
Okay. And Trey, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put in a quick plug for my parents. They've been big role models for me throughout my entire life.
Very clear. Yes.
They were very invested in this campaign, and they were backbone to our campaign for both of us. I mean, helping pick us up from the train every now and again and just swinging us places. So I do appreciate that. But in terms of politics, I'm seeing the posters around the room. Bobby Kennedy really is my hero. And my great-grandfather was a World War II vet. When he got out of the war, he was going to Revere Beach one day, and a young Jack Kennedy outstretched his arm in 1946 and said, "I'm running for Congress." And they ended up creating a friendship for a long time, and he ended up getting to know Bobby a little bit, and I had mentioned my great-aunt worked for Ted. And,
Yes.
obviously there's this great history to that
Right.
family, but from what I've read about Bobby, he seemed like such a genuine person. Somebody who had just a whole heart and wanted to give it to everybody he met, and that's what I want to do. I mean, I really want to just help people. And when I see a candidate like that, I really don't think we have many of those nowadays. People who are just selfless, would give the shirt off their back.
Yes.
And that's the type of person that I've at least learned that he was. And that's what I want to channel.
Well, I think you have many qualities. I know working in that campaign, it was interesting. Wherever you would go with him, he would be like on the back of a convertible top, and people would literally be pulling and yanking. And he was not a very big guy. I mean, he was a small, kind of the runt of the family. But I think a book that I would encourage you to read, and maybe you've read it, is the book that he wrote in the 68 campaign, To Seek a Newer World. Okay. Because it's clear when I talk to the two of you, there's a better world out there because of you. So thank you for joining us on Pain on Politics. We look forward to having an event for you, Trey, later this term, so that students can figure out how they can be you when they grow up.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks again, Chase. Thanks again, Trey.
Thank you.
People of Marlborough, you're very lucky because he's going to make you, I think, a very, very good council person, but I think there's another step ahead sometime. We're very proud of you, Trey and
Thank you.
Chase.
Appreciate it.